What I getting on there?
Right now, the Northeast is trying to breathe under mountains of snow left by Blizzard 2026. In just a few days, more than 600,000 customers lost power, at least 12 people have died, and Providence shattered its all-time snow record with nearly 38 inches. Streets in New York City look like frozen canyons, with walls of snow up to the waist and only narrow paths for anyone on foot. Here is the important part. Even as a lighter band of snow moves through today, another winter storm is already lining up behind it. Under a sky that finally looks calmer, the Northeast is still stuck in storm mode. On Monday, February 25th, a fast-moving band of light snow is sweeping from Maryland to Maine, adding just 1 to 3 inches on top of what Blizzard 2026 already dumped across the region. On a forecast map, that extra snow looks minor. On the ground, it is falling over waist-high snowbanks, half-melted slush, and refrozen patches of nearly invisible black ice. By midday, brief thawing turns intersections into rutted, muddy channels. By night, the same water hardens again into a thin, glassy film that can steal the footing of a pedestrian or the grip of a car tire in an instant. For commuters heading to work and children trying to get back to school, that fresh white dusting quietly hides every hazard underneath.
Aquí estamos afuera limpiando la nieve.
Meteorologists trace all of this back to a powerful bomb cyclone that deepened off the East Coast late last week, dropping the central pressure to around 965 millibars and driving Blizzard 2026 over the Ohio Valley and into New England. According to the Weather Prediction Center, the formal Winter Storm Severity Index has now dropped from major to minor or moderate impacts across much of the interior Northeast. But that color code does not show what everyday life looks like in New York, Boston, Providence, and dozens of smaller cities. In New York City alone, officials say they have already spread about 143 million pounds of salt on roads and hired at least 3,500 emergency snow laborers, paid roughly $30 an hour, to dig out bus stops, crosswalks, and sidewalks.
My neighbor said, fuck that, we not waiting for the city. We're getting people through. You know what I mean?
Really? How does this make sense?
This is the street. This is out plowing.
Reporters describe entire blocks turned into snow canyons, where people must squeeze through narrow carved paths and anyone using a wheelchair, walker, or stroller can barely move at all. In Providence and across Rhode Island, trucks are hauling loads of snow to overflow dumping sites because the usual storage lots are already full. Times Square may have its Broadway lights back on, but behind the neon, restaurants and theaters are still short-staffed and wrestling with delayed deliveries after days of power cuts and travel chaos. The atmosphere has moved on from the peak of the storm, but for millions of people living under these piles of snow, the real recovery is only just beginning. The story of Blizzard 2026 really began back on February 20th, when an ordinary-looking low-pressure system started to deepen over North America. As it moved toward the Atlantic, cold Arctic air plunged south and met warmer, moisture-rich air from the Gulf of Mexico and the western Atlantic. By the time the storm reached the offshore corridor, used by so many classic nor'easters, the central pressure had dropped to around 965 millibars. That kind of rapid fall is what meteorologists call a bomb cyclone. From late February 22 into February 23, the system wrapped bands of heavy snow and violent wind across the Ohio Valley, then swung them straight into New England. Over a broad belt from the Ohio Valley through upstate New York into New England, snow totals climbed to 2 or even 3 feet, with drifts far higher where the wind piled it up. Gusts near the coast reached almost 98 miles per hour at Wellfleet in Massachusetts, strong enough to topple trees, snap power lines, and shut down coastal roads. In Providence, Rhode Island, snow piled up to 37.9 inches at TF Green Airport, breaking the city's record from the blizzard of 1978 and likely setting a new all-time mark for the state. Around 40 locations across the Northeast reported more than 30 inches of snow. While residents tried to shovel out driveways, transformers were blowing, and plows struggled to keep even main highways open.
The day after the blizzard, and the streets are not plowed yet. Audrey, you're gonna hold the camera for me, okay?
As the core of the storm peaked on February the 22nd and 23rd, more than 600,000 customers lost power, mainly in Massachusetts and New Jersey. Major airports from Boston Logan to JFK, LaGuardia, Newark, and Philadelphia canceled over 9,000 flights and delayed more than 10,000 others in just 2 days. Amtrak cut back on service along key corridors as blowing snow and downed trees made rail travel risky. By February 25th, the main circulation had weakened and moved away, but a web of winter storm warnings and advisories still stretched from the Rockies to the Great Lakes and Appalachia, showing that this was part of a wider pattern of dangerous winter weather across much of the United States. On the maps, it looked like a textbook winter system. Inside dark apartments, stranded cars, and crowded emergency rooms, it felt like something very different. In the next part, we will step inside those moments.
Bye, Van.
In Massachusetts this week, the numbers about power outages hide very real nights in the dark. In towns where nearly 160,000 customers still had no electricity on Wednesday morning, families wrapped themselves in layers of blankets and moved into the one room that stayed just a little warmer. Parents kept phones on low brightness to save the last battery. Children tried to do homework by flashlight, while wind rattled the windows and the only sound outside was the scrape of plows and the hum of generators. For people who rely on medical equipment or refrigerated medicine, every hour without power was not just uncomfortable. It was a risk they could not control.
Mom's gonna stop it.
Along the coast in Newport, Rhode Island, police confirmed one of the most tragic stories to emerge in the past 24 hours. A 21-year-old college student was found unresponsive in a car that had been buried in snow. Investigators say the exhaust pipe was blocked. Carbon monoxide built up inside the vehicle until it became deadly. The scene is a harsh reminder that sitting in a running car to stay warm can turn fatal if snow is packed around the tailpipe. For neighbors who watched rescuers work, it was not an abstract safety warning. It was the loss of a young life on their own street. In Providence, where schools stayed online for a second straight day because side streets were still choked with snow, teachers tried to keep lessons moving while knowing many students were logging in from crowded apartments, cold houses, or relatives' homes. In New York City, some of the 3,500 emergency snow workers spent hour after hour carving narrow channels through frozen piles so that a person in a wheelchair could reach the corner or an elderly neighbor could make it to the pharmacy. When you hear the word cleanup, it sounds like a chore. For the people doing it, cleanup is the line between being stuck and being able to live a normal day again. In the next part, we will zoom out and look at how this storm is reshaping entire communities and local economies, not just single households. From a distance, Blizzard 2026 looks like a band of clouds on satellite images and a cluster of numbers on a weather map. Up close, it is a stress test for entire communities. In New York City, the 143 million pounds of salt spread on roads and the wages for thousands of emergency snow workers will eventually show up as a line item in the city budget. For now, they show up as tired backs, overtime shifts in storefronts that open late or not at all. Restaurants that finally turn their lights back on in Times Square report fewer reservations, staff stuck on delayed trains, and deliveries arriving hours behind schedule. Small grocery stores in outer boroughs are dealing with shelves that emptied quickly before the storm and trucks that cannot navigate narrow, icy side streets to restock them. Across Rhode Island and Massachusetts, the economic impact is scattered but real. When 600,000 customers lose power at the peak of the storm, every darkened house also means factories idled, offices closed, and stores forced to throw out spoiled inventory. Providence's record-breaking snow has not only shut classrooms, it has also slowed down court hearings, delayed construction projects, and pushed back medical appointments as patients cancel rather than risk the trip. Airports from Boston, Logan, to Newark have lost days of normal traffic, with more than 9,000 canceled flights and over 10,000 delays, disrupting business trips, tourism, and cargo shipments that usually move quietly through the belly of passenger jets. The ripple effect of those lost flights reaches warehouses hundreds of miles away, where shipments of parts and products simply do not arrive on time. Beyond the Northeast, a wide belt of winter storm warnings stretching from the Rockies to the Great Lakes tells its own economic story. In Colorado and Wyoming, heavy snow and 70-mile-per-hour gusts are closing mountain passes that truckers rely on to move goods across the country. In Michigan and along Lake Superior, blowing snow and icy roads are slowing down commuters and delivery drivers. These are not headline-grabbing numbers like a broken snow record, but they add up to missed shifts, delayed paychecks, and businesses forced to absorb yet another weather-related hit. In the next part, we will look at how emergency crews, local governments, and volunteers are trying to push back against all of this, one plow route, warming center, and relief effort at a time. While the snow totals and damage numbers draw most of the headlines, the less visible fight is happening in public works yards, emergency operations centers, and neighborhood streets. Across New York City, fleets of plow trucks and front-end loaders are working around the clock to widen those snow canyons into usable sidewalks and streets. Crews that spent the height of the storm simply trying to keep main arteries open are now being reassigned to side streets, bus stops, and crosswalks so that people can actually move. City agencies are coordinating with transit authorities to prioritize routes to hospitals, fire stations, police precincts, and major subway hubs, knowing that a cleared corner can be the difference between someone getting to work or staying stuck at home. In Providence and other Rhode Island communities, the focus has shifted from surviving the blizzard to managing the sheer volume of snow it left behind. Trucks shuttle load after load to overflow dumping sites, while local officials balance the need to clear streets with concerns about flooding once temperatures rise, and all of that snow begins to melt. Schools that stayed online have doubled as informal hubs for information, with teachers and administrators passing along updates about warming centers, food distribution, and road closures. In Massachusetts, where tens of thousands of customers are still without power, utility crews are working long shifts to replace poles, restring lines, and restart substations. They are joined by out-of-state teams brought in under mutual aid agreements, a reminder that big storms routinely force regional cooperation, not just local effort. Farther west, in the Rockies and along the Appalachians, highway crews are racing weather windows to treat and clear high mountain passes where new snow and 70-mile-per-hour gusts keep rebuilding drifts across the pavement. Avalanche control teams are monitoring slopes loaded with fresh powder, ready to close roads or trigger control slides before an unwary driver ends up in the wrong place at the wrong time. The National Weather Service continues to update winter storm warnings and advisories so local authorities can decide when to close schools, when to open shelters, and when to simply tell people to stay off the roads. None of this removes the risk, but it does buy time and give communities a better chance to adapt to what is coming next. In the next part, we will look at why Blizzard 2026 is already being called historic and what it might be telling us about winters in the years ahead. Meteorologists are already calling Blizzard 2026 historic, and not just because of the dramatic images. On the scientific side, the storm checked almost every box for an extreme winter system. Its central pressure fell rapidly to around 965 millibars offshore, a classic bomb cyclone signature. It tracked about 160 kilometers farther east than many past nor'easters, pushing the heaviest snow band over Rhode Island instead of focusing on New York City or Washington, D.C. At Providence's TF Green Airport, 37.9 inches of snow fell in roughly 25 hours, smashing the city's blizzard 1978 record and likely setting a new all-time state record. In a single day, the city saw about 35.5 inches, nearly 10 times its previous single-day snow record. Those are the kinds of numbers that move a storm from severe into the history books. Behind those numbers lies a broader question. Forecasters point out that this system tapped into unusually moist air from both the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic, feeding on a sharp temperature gradient to squeeze out extraordinary snowfall in a relatively short time. At the same time, climate scientists have warned for years that a warmer atmosphere can hold more water vapor, which can turn into heavier precipitation when conditions line up. That does not mean every big snowstorm is directly caused by climate change, but it does mean that the background conditions are shifting toward a world where intense, high-impact events may become more frequent, even as the total number of snowy days in a winter season declines. Blizzard 2026 is also a reminder that impacts do not stop when the snow does. Record-breaking totals in one city, a bomb cyclone offshore, and a web of winter storm warnings stretching from the Rockies to the Great Lakes and Appalachia all point to a pattern where one system rolls into the next. As another developing storm begins to draw attention for early March, communities that have just been tested will have to decide how to strengthen infrastructure, improve warning systems, and change habits before the next round arrives. In the final section, we will pull these threads together and ask what this week's storm really means for people living through today's winter and planning for the next one. When you put all of this together, Blizzard 2026 is more than a headline about record-breaking snow. It is a week in which at least 12 people lost their lives, hundreds of thousands lost power, and one city after another discovered how vulnerable basic routines can be when a bomb cyclone parks just offshore. Providence shattered long-standing snow records. New York carved snow canyons just to let people walk down the street. Families in Massachusetts, New Jersey, and Rhode Island spent night after night in cold, dark homes, waiting for the lights and heat to come back. The storm has moved off the map, but it is still very present in bank accounts, school schedules, and empty chairs at the table. The broader message is simple. Winter storms like this are not just about a single day of extreme weather. They are about how prepared our power grids, cities, and households are for a climate where intense events can arrive in quick succession. As forecasters already track the next system lining up for early March, this is the moment to check your own plans, talk with family and neighbors, and pay close attention to official updates in your area. What part of this week's storm made you stop and think most about how ready your community really is for the next big winter hit?